Welcome back to the absolutely epic early week podcast. This is week 4. I'm Dean. Dean's 7904 if you want to get all technical on me. Returning is our usual suspects. First, leading off, it's one BobbyFi. Bobby, how are things? How's this Monday evening treating you?
It's good, man. I had a profitable weekend. Should have been better. I took Calvin Ridley out of most of my main lineups and played my best lineups were all with him and Boyd together in it. Almost had one of those really, really good weekends, but didn't play huge volume, so did well, happy with it. Just wish a couple things would have gone differently. But yeah, I know we had a lot of shenanigans going on in the last shows, which is sort of something we do from time to time, but thought we would stick more to football early on, so I'm getting ready, back focused on this week.
You're saying no shenanigans on this podcast. Is that we're naming this one?
I'm saying limited shenanigans.
We got to find the perfect balance of content as far as DFS and shenanigans. I think we'll make it work. We'll figure it out by like week 15 or so, maybe week 16. Our returning champion is one Grant Neefer. Grant, how did week 4 treat you? Week 3, actually.
It's weird. I didn't play a whole lot because I was at a bachelor party this weekend, and strangely enough, I just ended up knowing that I may or may not be in the most best cognitive mind on Sunday morning. I did a whole bunch of drafts and did like over 1,000 of them. And I was apparently crushing last night, and now the server is unable to keep up with all my drafts and won't show me how much I'm winning or losing. But as of right now, as of last night, it looks like I'm winning a ton of money. But we'll see how this weekend or this game tonight actually affected me. But I mean, I think regardless, I won money. I don't know how much, but I didn't play a huge amount.
I know for sure we definitely crossed paths. I saw your name plenty of times when I was drafting. I actually hand draft like a schmuck. What am I doing? I should be you just basically lock in your players and you go out and you have a pajama jam. What are you guys doing? Whatever you guys are up to in your bachelor party. But yeah, Bobby mentioned Boyd. I am so tilted. That was like one of those last second. I couldn't figure out my cash games, and I locked in Gio. I'm like, I don't know if I want to be married to too many Bengals for my cash games, and oh boy, it was a disastrous like 2v2 or 3v3. And I think Boyd ended up so super chalky in a monster game. Of course, it didn't hurt with AJ Green getting hurt either. But yeah, it was a rough week for the old almanac. I'm definitely looking forward to week 4. Do have to mention, by the way, this is the first week where we have buys. So we're recording this podcast on a Monday night. This is literally a first look. I mean, I've dug into some PFF stuff and like stats and things of that sort, but opinions are going to change throughout the week, obviously. You only can get so in-depth as far as breaking things down as far as matchups and all that. But we do have some so yeah, keep that in mind. If you're listening to this on like a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night, like last week, the cap was really, really tight when we recorded it. And all of a sudden, as the week progressed, it's like, well, this guy's out and that guy's out and this guy's out. And then all of a sudden, it was, Chalk City, and you had some cheapies out there, like can't miss Latavius Murray. I'm not bitter or nothing. All right. As far as a couple teams that are on bye, we have Washington and Carolina. They're not playing this week, so cross them off the list. We only talk about the main slate as well. So Minnesota, we're not talking about them. And boy, they had a bye last week too. I think they might as well. They barely got off the bus, but yeah, Minnesota and the Rams. That's the Thursday night game. Baltimore, Pittsburgh is a Sunday night game. So no Pittsburgh again on the main slate. And then Bobby, there's no Kansas City. They play Monday night. So I don't know who to play. Kansas City and Denver are not in the main slate. We can't play Kansas City. I don't know if I want to play.
Yeah, it's like a totally different world right now. Like this is not the NFL 2018 that we've seen so far. So maybe we have to trust back in some 2017 type stuff. And there's a few spots I want to play, but it's a weird week looking at it. It's not like you just gravitate towards anything that just jumps out at you. You need to have one of those 2 or 3 games. It's a very different week.
Grant, feel free to give me your thoughts as far as last week. We do have to. We give our question at the end of the podcast, our favorite answer. We give them a T-shirt, Bobby. Grant, remind the people what the question was, or remind the people of the answer, because somebody banked your answer like right away, basically.
Yeah, it was the double down. The double down is the best creation in fast food history. And who was it that won? I sent the screenshot over to you, but whoever it was that was the first one to get that, I'll play a $20 head-to-head over on DK. And you can pick my quarterback regardless of if they're playing or not. So Jimmy G's probably my quarterback.
Oh, that would just be cruel. They should give you at least give you Beathard or something like that. That was Chief Man 11.
No chance of winning it anymore. Not anymore.
Actually, Beathard is something that's
quarterback every week. Like you can safely get 25 from anybody, basically. I don't think you can win at this anymore, Grant.
I can do whatever I want. All I have to do is stack up a team just without the quarterback and hope they go off. Just stack up New Orleans. Take Kamara, take Thomas. The game goes off. Even without a quarterback, I'll win.
So Chief Bet 11, if you're out there lurking, I'm not going to go stalking you, but find me, slide into my DMs on the old Twitter machine, and I'll hook you up with a nice little T-shirt there from RotoGrinders as well. Congratulations. You've correctly answered Grant's question, which was the best fast food item that has been discontinued, which I guess we're not even going to argue. Sure, I'll accept that. We don't have time for such silliness because, again, we're corporate this week. We're talking straight DFS for the most part. Grant, what is our assessment as far as a slate? Again, I mean, we're talking about Kansas City not being in the main slate. We only have 12 teams. There's not like these monster over-unders. I guess the first game that kind of sort of jumps out is the New Orleans and the Giants. Kamara, obviously, you want a piece of, but as of this recording, I think it's going to be hard to get him in. Well, you can make it work as far as the lineup build. My first look, I can have one big spend that it might be Kamara because he's just absolutely ridiculous. Can't expect he's going to get, 20 targets again. But is he your big spend? Well, let's not even ask that just yet. Give me your overall assessment as far as how you're attacking this slate.
Well, we're finally about 3 weeks into the season, and I think I have enough data to really find where there's some giant discrepancies in certain things and some trends that people aren't going to catch on to. So at this point, I'm able to find a whole lot of value, and I think it's going to be pretty easy to spend up on a lot of guys. And there's so much offense going on in the NFL this year. I think a lot of it has to do with the new rule changes where it's hard to get pressure on a quarterback because you don't know if he's going to be able to do anything. I mean, you don't know if you're going to be able to tackle him because you're probably going to get a 15-yard penalty regardless for falling on him.
It's illegal.
Sorry, what?
No, I was saying it's illegal to tackle quarterbacks these days, yeah. But go ahead. I apologize. Continue.
Yeah, it's illegal to tackle quarterbacks. It's illegal to do almost anything. It's terrible right now. And just watching this Monday night game was horrible. But if you're moving down the field 15 yards pretty much every single drive for free and doesn't really matter too much up, down, and might be on the extension of a throw, there's going to be so much scoring, so many touchdowns, so many extra yards that it's going to be impossible to have low scores, I think, for the rest of the season. I was looking at Vegas over-unders this last weekend, and all the public was absolutely hammering every single over, and I think the majority of them hit because there's just a ridiculous amount of scoring. So looking at trends from past years is not going to be nearly as useful as it is this year.
Bobby, how about yourself? What's your assessment? How are you attacking this slate before you start digging in?
Yeah, I agree that everything is different. It's a different game completely. Like you're going to have these ridiculous, game stacks that are going to be winning a lot of the weeks. I don't think it'll necessarily be every single week, but this is a week though that could be a little bit different, and I think it's an interesting week that we should talk about. Grant's talking about a ton of value. I see some potential spots, but I don't see a lot of value that's extreme that I feel great about.
All right, Grant, give us your first quote-unquote value play.
Oh, I mean, if you're it depends on what position you want to look at. I mean, obviously, value has different meanings, but if we're looking at the wide receiver position, there is a lot of not quite min-price guys, but incredibly low-price guys for what they can offer. I mean, just looking at Larry Fitzgerald at $5K going up against Seattle. I mean, I get they hasn't been terribly involved, but kind of any rookie quarterback coming in, they're going to have a bit of a security blanket, and I have a feeling that's going to be DJ and that's going to be Larry Fitz. I mean, he was playing for 4 minutes. We can't take too much of that into account, especially playing things out for the rest of the week. But Fitz is there. We have Calvin Ridley, who crushed last week. We have Sterling Shepard going up against New Orleans, Tyler Boyd, Callaway with Mayfield. They seem to have a bit of a connection there. Tyler Gabriel's getting worked into the offense with Nagy a whole lot, so he's a great play. We have guys that are getting a bunch of targets week in and week out because of the way that defenses are scheming against them. And so I think that any of those guys just for wide receiver between 3.9 to 5K are just way too underpriced.
That's where I'm at too. Go ahead,
the Gabriel part of it. I just feel like there's so many weapons on that team. I'm just going to spend, the guy who I thought you were going to mention, who's on the higher end of this real value is I think Allen Robinson is going to have a monster week, just an absolute monster week. And I feel really good about that. I feel good about – I like the idea of the Fitz play. I think there's a lot of upside for that in that situation for that price. I think even guys we didn't mention Goodwin, I know without Garoppolo, but it might not be the worst idea, and Boyd. I just feel like none of these guys do you feel completely safe, in my opinion, hardly. with the exception.
Goodwin was really hindered when, small sample. When Beathard was there last year, he wasn't that great under Beathard, and he actually thrived under Garoppolo, which is a lot of reasons why people thought Goodwin would break out this year. So I don't know. I mean, sure, he can always get there in one pass, but I'm actually down on Goodwin. And we'll talk about him in a second. But let's throw it on the back burner because we'll have a whole discussion about San Francisco. But, Bobby, amongst that group, you got Fitzgerald at 5K for Seattle, just like the name brand. That just seems way, way too cheap. And like as Grant alluded to, it's a bad situation with the rookie quarterback and an offense that's inept. They can't move the ball. They seem to have the worst coaching staff in history. Who knows what they're doing with David Johnson, what they're doing with Peterson on defense. They seem to have no clue what they're doing in Arizona. And Fitzgerald, why did he come back for this? Well, he could have stayed retired and just got his Hall of Fame jacket 1 year earlier. But, and he's, an absolute professional. I'm sure he's going to do his best to work with the rookie. And that price is just so cheap at 5K.
Why are we so sure Rosen is going to be, like, terrible? Like, Sam Bradford can be pretty bad at times. Like, what if Rosen comes in and actually, like, I don't think they're going to be a good offense. They're still one of the worst 3 teams in football, but they're going to, like, there's every reason to think that they could, like, be better because they couldn't be much worse. And Seattle doesn't have – their defense is again, another name brand only at this point, with the exception of, like, two really good spots where they're excellent. But Fitz, I just feel like, Rosen, what if he really tries to find him 14 times or something like that? Like, we don't know what's going to happen. So I actually think this is, like, a good thing that it's a rookie quarterback coming in.
Maybe, yeah. But my thought is just that I just don't trust the coaches to put him in the best possible position to succeed. That's sort of where I'm at. But the other part of it is 5K. I mean, it doesn't matter who's coaching for 5K, Grant. Fitzgerald looks like a great play. Yeah.
I mean, he's still, like, people can say they got 2 targets in this last week. I mean, that's fine. It was a weird game. Every single Arizona game has been a weird game, and they're probably going to become from behind, even though I think it's only a 3-point spread. But he still has 18 targets on the season. He's still a guy that, like, we've all thought he was done or they wasn't going to be involved at any other point in his, like, the last 2 years of his career. He's getting just old, but he's still a very viable target, and he's still a guy that's going to be relied on heavily.
All right, so Grant, who's a chase and who's worth, like, doubling down on? Calvin Ridley, of course, he's not going to get 3 touchdowns again, I don't think, and match what Julio Jones just touched on, basically what he had all of last season. I think that's what he had last year, right? 3? I think that's the note I heard. Nonetheless, he's not going to get 3 touchdowns again. I don't think so. He's still 4.9K for Cincinnati. Obviously, he has a ton of pedigree being a first-round pick. It feels like a slight chase, but still it might be underpriced at 4.9. Boyd at 4.6, especially if AJ Green comes back. He's expected back for what it's worth. Again, we're recording this on Monday. He said he'll be okay. Cincinnati wouldn't talk about it for what it's worth. And then Mike Williams coming off 2 touchdowns as well. Looks like he's well positioned against San Francisco. Like, who is a chase here, Grant, and who's, like, worth chasing?
So Mike Williams is absolutely worth chasing. The guy is a beast. We've kind of knew that he would be this year. At least I did. So I didn't want me to brag there. It's just I look at the Chargers a lot. But he's a guy that is absolutely talented. He's in a very good passing offense. And he's 4,500 after waited last weekend, and how he's looked for most of the season, just in my opinion, is just way too good for that. And then Antonio Callaway, I don't know if you mentioned him, but he's going to be a heavy part of this offense. They got rid of Josh Gordon. All they have is Landry, and Landry can't eat up every single target in the game. He had like 15 last week, and Callaway still ended up with 10. He missed a few deep balls and a few like missed throws could have made him have a huge day. He's going up against Oakland, who so far on the season, like they're forcing targets to the outside, forcing targets to wide receivers constantly. So I could see those are the 2 guys that I really want to double down on. I'm not as huge of a fan of Ridley. Like, I'm not going to overreact to it. He's still good. He's still a very good play, but he's going to cause just tons of people are going to own him. And this is still an Atlanta team that at certain times, like different guys in the offenses have had huge days. So you look at last year and you get those new days. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just about to say that. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, like, it's actually a funny, sneaky week. I played some of him and Sanu together last week, but it's kind of a funny week to put, like, maybe play Sanu instead of him because no one's going to own him, and he's cheap enough that he's still technically the number 2 receiver.
Yeah, Sanu. And then who was was it Gabriel that was on that team last year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the Ridley role, but Ridley is much, 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 much better. Ridley is amazing.
That's fine if he's much, much better, but, like, Gabriel still, like, he still had those random weeks where he would do a whole bunch and then we'd overreact to it and then he wouldn't do too much and the team starts scheming for him. So it's not a surefire bet that Ridley is going to crush value this week or any week going forward, but he still does have huge potential in every single spot.
Mm-hmm. I'm also going to throw Sterling Shepard in the conversation here, Bobby. He's 4.9K. I think he becomes especially appealing if Evan Ingram sits. He hurt himself last game, and as of this recording, he's currently day-to-day, so we'll see. We'll check back in on that later this week. But if he doesn't go, a game against New Orleans, I think can shoot that to some extent. And we saw, just looking at one game, we saw that, Julio didn't go off, but, of course, the not number one receiver went off. And, of course, Beckham's the number one there for the Giants. And I would imagine that I'm losing the name now. Grant, help me out. Who's the lockdown corner there for New Orleans?
Lattimore.
Yeah. I would assume, again, I have to dig into this kind of stuff. I haven't had a chance to dig into it. I would assume Lattimore is more likely to be on Beckham. Any interest on you guys as far as Shepard under the assumption that Ingram sits?
I like Shepard. I feel similarly about a lot of guys in this range. I'm going to have to do a little more diving. I do like the Mike Williams idea. I'm a little worried about this matchup. I think this is one the Chargers could actually win just really, really easily. I actually believe in their defense, and I think they've had some tough matchups. And I mean, they faced the two best teams in football, best offenses in recent football history. Anyway, I think Williams is going to get looks when they need him, when they need another big receiver, and he's a good big target. And I think that Rivers and him will do well together. I don't know that this is the right week that they're going to need all of that. I'm really worried that game could turn into it's over at halftime kind of a game. And I don't know. I still think he's really interesting just because I think they will use him more in the offense. It's hard for me, though, right now on Monday to try and figure out which of these guys is better because I think they all have upside. I think there's all risk with pretty much all of them, and obviously we need some information.
Bobby, this is the first look, man. You got to plant your flag and stick with it, and you can't change at all from now until next Sunday.
Oh, well, then why don't we just play Jordy Nelson, and he'll have another 500 million yards receiving. I'm actually not going to play Jordy Nelson. It is funny that he's 4,700. We didn't even mention him. And Geronimo Allison.
I did not play Jordy Nelson last week. I had 0 shares in Jordy Nelson.
No one did. That would have been nice, though.
Yeah, that would have been good times. Grant, so I'm willing to roster anybody for the right price and willing to fade anybody for the wrong price. And picking on the Jaguars feels like a terrible idea, right? Who wants to do that? But Quincy Enunwa, the clear number one there for the Jets, he doesn't have a ton of touchdown equity. But 4.3K, that just seems way too cheap for me. Am I nuts?
I mean, I don't. You probably are, but for different reasons.
Different reasons. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, 4.3K. He's got 29 targets on the season. He had 8 last week. They've been targeting him a bit in the red zone. I don't think you're crazy for it. They're probably going to be coming from behind. It's not a terrible play. It's not a fantastic play, I don't think. But it's not a terrible play since the volume's going to be there and the price is right. And, I mean, Jacksonville is a very good defense, but it's still just too cheap for a guy that is going to be getting that much volume in, especially in a tough spot where they're going to end up passing the ball a whole lot probably later on in the game because they're probably going to be down. I mean, I get the Jaguars only scored – 9 points last weekend? I can't remember. It was the under.
It was a 6-9 game versus Tennessee. I believe they lost 9-6.
Oh, yeah, but it's still a spot where Nuno is going to get a bunch of targets, and I mean, that's target people money.
Right now, I'm going to ask you, scan DraftKings right now. Find me a better play at 4-3 and under, not named Callaway. I know you're going to say Callaway right. He's the same price. Give me a different guy that just kind of work your way down, and I'll give you a second to kind of look at that. And Bobby, do you have any thoughts as far as Enunwa, or am I nuts here?
I don't think I'll play him, but I get it.
Okay.
I get it.
I'm trying to make Enunwa happen. It's so cheap, man.
Why am I reaching when I like guys at 46 and 49 to get a guy who's 43? I'm going to go down. I'll take a shot, and I got Moncrief on the other side in the same game. After letting some of us down who took a shot on them this week. I really tried to go with that 3 minimum cost wide receiver thing. It almost worked out amazingly for me. I basically needed a big play for Moncrief, and it would have been beautiful with the Gurley and help me out combo, the Gurley and Kamara combo. Anyway,
those guys are pretty good. They're just really expensive. I'm going to make a lineup as this conversation goes through. So, and I'm going to definitely abide by DK guidelines and leave out a defense and a flex or something, maybe a tight end. And see if this conversation spawns an interesting lineup. But as of right now, I've locked in Shepard and Fitzgerald, and we have a couple of those receivers in the maybe column. But I think where I'm at right now in my head, of course, Grant, like you have to love Thomas, and Beckham seems like a great touring play here. Hopkins against Indianapolis, who granted they've been better than we suspect, but they certainly, I feel like they definitely actually can be exposed, especially in the turf. I like Hopkins a fair amount, and I want to pair him with this quarterback as well too, if nothing else for tournaments. Do you have a favorite big spend as far as receivers? Like I think my cash game brain is telling me to spend down on receivers and kind of spend up on a big running back. But if you had the money, all the money in the world, who is your favorite receiver on the slate?
I mean, that's a pretty tough one, but I don't know, probably Mike Evans. Honestly, he's probably my favorite guy to stand up for. I mean, Jarvis Landry, as bad as it sounds, he's going to have a huge amount of volume, but I don't like spending up too much at wide receiver this weekend. And there's something that we should point out that I think is a good subject to go to next. On the year, 36% of targets for Indianapolis or teams going against Indianapolis, only 36% of them are going to wide receivers, and it looks like 60% of them are going to between tight ends and running backs. I don't think any other team is below 45, and I don't think any team last year was under 50%. It could just be the fact that the opponents they've gone against rely heavily on that, but it's still a ridiculous thing to see, especially when they're going up against a team that concentrates a whole bunch of targets on their top two wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up and seeing who's Indy's played. I think they've had some pretty – I don't want to say cupcake matchups. I feel like they haven't been completely challenged.
It's like they got that. AJ Green had a big game against them. Like,
it wasn't on volume though. That's the thing. Like,
Philly.
Yeah, they faced Chris Thompson. That's going to skew the numbers right there.
Yeah, and then they faced Ertz, and that's going to skew the numbers right there. But it's still
and Jordan Reed. I mean, it's interesting. It's still an interesting stat.
Yeah, I mean, it's 3 weeks, so you can't really overreact to things too much at all. But I mean, that it still kind of scares me away a bit from the Houston wide receivers here this weekend.
I do love Landry. It's weird to see Landry. He's steadily now 7.4K. He was 7.6 versus the Jets, but he's justified. He's getting all the targets in the world, Bobby. This is a guy who I'm used to paying like 5 or 6K, at least going back a year or so, but it feels like he's better positioned now in Cleveland. He's the clear number one, and it looks like he's got a legit quarterback in a small sample, right? At least a sample in the NFL. As far as Baker Mayfield, he looked legit out there. I think it's worth noting they were chasing that game, so that's why he was throwing a ton, and who knows how it's going to go against Oakland. But what are your thoughts as far as Landry at 7.4K, Bobby?
Yeah, I think you got to have interest in him at 7.4. I think he's probably the best play in his price range, just, for safety in this range. But I think I'm willing to take some shots on T.Y. I still like that game stacking with those stats Grant brought up. It sounds more like how Indy runs their offense. They throw like 30 targets to the tight ends every week. But I do sort of like, running back the Indy tight end with one or even both of these receivers. I really like Fuller. I know that it's crazy. The price is high. And the only way that it's chasing is that every single game he plays with Deshaun Watson, the same thing happens. He has 100 yards receiving or a big or whatever, 60 yards receiving even, but then he'll have 3 touchdowns. He is a touchdown machine with Watson, and I think that's a sneaky game in Indy. I know Indy's defense has been okay so far, and that Houston hasn't been quite right, but I think this is that's sort of a sneaky shootout game. So I sort of like Fuller and Hopkins.
Grant, take a guess what the ADOT is for T.Y. Hilton so far this season with Noodle Arm Luck throwing the ball to him.
Yeah, so it's really interesting seeing Luck now, and I think he has the lowest, he's just not passing the ball downfield. He's dumping stuff off. He doesn't seem to be able to throw downfield. It just makes Hilton a really interesting play. He can do stuff in open space, but obviously being able to throw the ball downfield is a drastic advantage for Luck. If you're talking about Hilton's equity, he still had 12 targets in the last game, and with Luck throwing so many just short passes, a lot of these guys like Doyle and Eben, I can't even remember his name. Doesn't matter. Doyle's backup.
Evan Ingram.
Ingram. Gosh, That's what. Yeah. In any case, so
No,
many.
it's Derek Doyle's backup is Eric Ebron.
Yeah, you were thinking Evan Ingram. Yeah, that's where I wanted to go to immediately. I'm like, all right, he said it might be right.
Whatever his name is. He dropped the ball 3 times in the end zone last game.
Yeah, he's horrible. I don't know how he has a job still.
I'm going to play him again.
Yeah, no, not playing him at all. But Hilton, like, anytime you're getting that much targets and you have a guy that quickly that can end up doing something in open space, it's in Indy. It very well it could pay off, but it's just so tough to know that you're not getting a huge downfield bomb from Luck at any point during this entire game.
Yeah, I like him on the turf, of course, T.Y. And as far as the question, the answer is 8. His A.dot in the season, T.Y. Hilton, is 8, which isn't very
I disregard that. I don't care.
No worries. We don't talk A.dot in this. Come on, A.dot. This is Monday night. We don't type that kind of nonsense. Yeah, and the other part about Luck is, like, we know we feel like he's still not 100% healthy, and he was yanked off the field. They needed to throw him Hail Mary, and they pulled him off with the backup. I think they're like 455 yards or so away from the end zone, and he got the hook. So, I mean, I would assume Andrew Luck 2 years ago would not have got the hook. So, you could say what you want about him. They're talking about he can still make all the throws. I don't know if I believe he can still make all the throws. So, yeah, I'm just not trusting Andrew Luck. And he's like a poor man's, like, Alex Smith these days, basically. Maybe a worse version. Who knows? That might be a mean thing to say. But, Bobby, I'm just not buying any stock in Andrew Luck these days.
You're up, Bobby.
In what way? Like, he's been good and the team's been good, like, for what they are. Like, yes, he might be, have one arm and it's not the one he used to throw. But
besides that,
I mean, come on, man. Like, give the guy a break. Like, I don't know.
We're not defending him for, like, being worse because of injuries. We're trying to say that he's not a viable fantasy option, and outside of Doyle just getting a lot of short passes is not viable. We're not talking about him as a person. He seems like a nice guy, dope beard, but
yeah, he's got a pretty scary voice too. But, like, yeah, you don't have to play the guy with the one uniform. There's other guys out there that have actual fully functional.
Yeah. I'm not saying you need to play. I'm just saying that, like, T.Y. could still break off big plays. I don't think that. I think it's true, but it's not entirely true that he won't see any long balls. I still think it's
all right. So Garoppolo, his arm is fine. The problem with him is his knee. He's got the ACL, so he's done for the year, unfortunately. Grant, how does this change the scenario? How does this change the dynamics of this team? We saw Beathard in a small sample through to Carlos Hyde as running back last year a ton. So I think the running backs get a bump here, and I would assume that they're probably not going to be as wide open. They're probably going to want to run the ball a little bit more. I think that's Breida becomes kind of interesting to me. I suppose Kittle, you can give the shower narrative that I believe Levitan came up with. Of course, they showered together in college, for whatever that's worth. Yeah, and also, as for this week, Grant, Beathard is 4.6K. We have a functioning quarterback. Now, I don't know if it's a noodle arm or not. He's probably more so Andrew Luck than he is, Mahomes, but he's 4.6K. We like cheap quarterbacks. How interested are we?
So Vegas hates him, which is an interesting thing because generally, like, I don't view him as a bad quarterback, but Vegas now has a line at 10.5 against the Chargers. There's only an 18.5 point implied team total for San Francisco. I last year I would have said, yeah, go with Beathard. Go with him. Roll with him. Absolutely. You're saving that much money at quarterback. This year with all the rule changes, quarterbacks score more points. It's just that simple. We've never had a quarterback throw 400 yards in 3 straight weeks, and now we have Ryan Fitzpatrick doing it. We haven't seen guys do what Ben's been doing these first 3 weeks or Mahomes been doing these first 3 weeks, and it's just commonplace when just naming those 3 guys, having 3 of the best starts to a season ever in 1 year, and I'm not even including guys like Drew Brees that have been crushing it, Matt Ryan that put up a ridiculous start last week. It's just entirely different now where quarterbacks are now more important. Wide receivers are now more important. Scoring is now more important. So paying down and getting a low score from one guy is going to crush your team on almost any given week. So I don't know if it's entirely – like in the Chargers, they may be without Bosa, but they're a good defense even though they haven't performed like it this year. They have a good secondary. They just happen to not go great the first 3 weeks. So I'm willing to bet that they're actually better than they've played, and I'm rolling with them as a good defense. So I think, if anything, I'd rather play the Chargers defense. Although Breida, Yeah, he's very good. I like him a lot. I need to look at the snap counts for last week, guys. I think Moore still got in the game a decent amount, but the guy's really talented. He's going to catch a few balls at least out of the backfield.
You're saying opportunity cost is greater at quarterback than it's ever been, basically.
Yeah, it is. And it's not like we have a 7.5K quarterback this week. The most expensive guy is Rodgers at 6.8.
Are we interested in Rodgers against Buffalo? It feels like the same thought we had last week, where it's just like, well, they're gonna gotta wall up Buffalo, and what is he gonna do in the second half? And Rodgers is another guy who I'm not completely sure how healthy he is. I know he's still great and he's still Aaron Rodgers, but I'm probably not going there. Shorter in tournaments, of course. But Bobby, give your thoughts as far as Beathard and who jumps out at running back at quarterback this week. There's several guys even in the 5K range that I think are in play. Not so much Little Warm Luck, but there's other guys for me. Where are you looking?
Yeah, I see no reason with the Beathard thing. Like, I
Oh, we lost him.
don't to play at 4,600. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, that's weird. I don't understand the point of playing Beathard. It makes no sense to me on this week. I think that the defense, I would take at the same price as Beathard against him. It's a tough defense, this Chargers team. This is not the same situation. And like Grant said, you need more points from your quarterbacks these days. So I'm passing on Beathard, but I think that with quarterbacks in general, like, you have to just try and get the guys who have the best chances for the home run plays. And obviously with the way that Tampa's been playing, that Fitzpatrick is going to be high on that list. I think Deshaun Watson is still high on that list. I think that was a fluky thing. I think that Tom Brady might actually be safe with upside this week. Like, I know that's weird, but I really think they come out strong in this spot. I think paying up.
I was told he was safe with upside last week. That's what I was promised, but he turns out he wasn't.
Wait, which week?
Last week.
Tom Brady against Detroit.
They have a terrible history against their former coordinators, even though the former coordinators always are terrible coaches. It's a weird thing.
Okay. He's never ripped up Eric Mangini?
No, I'm sure they have too, but like overall, the numbers were decidedly skewed. I saw them the other day. Anyway, I think you are paying up for the most part, and you're trying to find that game. Like I'm finding myself leaning a lot with Watson early in the week. I do think Brady's interesting, and again, you're playing for these guys to get 3 or 4 touchdowns. And the thing that's funny is, like, people are going to think this might be an overreaction. I think that there's a lot of talent on this Browns team, and Baker Mayfield at 5,300. If you want to save money, why wouldn't you just spend 700 more on him against a really, really questionable Oakland defense? I prefer playing Carlos Hyde in this game over Mayfield. I think it's more of a Carlos Hyde's going to have a multi-touchdown game in my opinion, but I like Mayfield if you're not going with that.
I like Hyde too. I wish he was getting more snaps. He had 45 of 77 last game for what it's worth. Bobby, there is a whole bunch of – no, Grant, jump in here as far as your quarterback takes, because there is a bunch of dudes that are worth talking about. And Dalton in the Dome against Atlanta. An Atlanta defense that lost another one of their players, their season. On the defensive end, they are certainly dropping all over the place. That Atlanta defense is really vulnerable, not just on a running back pass, but they lost somebody in the secondary this time. Just some really, really bad breaks for the Falcons as the season has progressed so far. Assuming that A.J. Green's back, I want A.J. Green at 5.4K. And I agree, Mayfield at 5.3 is really interesting. Eli in a tournament I don't hate, which is a weird sentence to say. But I love Watson at 6.3 versus Indianapolis. This is the guy that basically he's yet to have a big game yet, and he's still been fine, basically. He wasn't good against New England, sure. Tennessee, he didn't do anything special. He got you 26 points on DK versus Giants. He got you 29 points. He still hasn't had like a rushing touchdown. He gives you basically a floor of 4. He starts the game with 40 rushing yards, essentially. He's going to run one in one of these days, too. So that's 10 points, and he can knock that out. And then also he's on the carpet against an Indy team. We just don't really trust their defense just yet. At least I don't. So he's one of the guys that's jumping out for me. Grant, what say you?
Why not go with Phillip Rivers, who chances are if they score, it's going to be through passing. I get that Melvin gets a decent amount of rushing touchdowns, but a lot of his touchdowns are from receiving. Phillip Rivers can put up 450 yards in pretty much any given game. He has so many weapons now where we've seen in the past, like when Allen's injured, certain guys are injured that he doesn't have too many weapons. Now he's got Mike Williams on the other end. He's got Tyrell Williams, who's always had a little bit of connection with. He's got so many guys that he can throw to, and with the new rules, he's going to have some more time, and he's going to have likely free penalties all over the place. They have a 29 implied team total right now, which I think is the highest in the board. Yes, I get that's a 10.5 point spread. I think it's going to be closer than that. but he can absolutely light it up all over the place here. Their offense is more shifted towards passing the ball in first down than running the ball in first down like they were the few previous years. And we saw the second half of last season when Phil was putting up huge numbers. Why not go with him at 200 more than Watson?
Do you think San Fran can keep it close enough where we can get to some 4 quarters of chucking from Rivers?
Yeah.
Why? Like, based on what?
I don't think Beathard is nearly as bad. The spread changed drastically when the Jimmy G news came out. It would not be a 10.5-point spread if it weren't for the Jimmy G news. And how often do you think, the Chargers are going to blow this team out, and then it becomes
a different Chargers team. This is not the same team anymore. They happen to have played 2 very difficult teams. They played the Chiefs and the Rams already. So the Chargers are really good. The defense is legitimate. This is a very different team than the same team that this has happened to for all these years. And I think that this is going to be a tough one for San Francisco to hang in personally. That's just my personal take. I think it would have been hard for them with Garoppolo. I believe in this Chargers team. Anyway.
You guys have any other takes as far as quarterbacks? There's a whole bunch of options out there that are worth playing, as there always is. And, there's no Mahomes, so you have to think about it this week, right? I think Beathard is kind of sort of somewhat interesting, as it just kind of opened the salary up and get you a different shuffle. Maybe you can pay up for one more guy. Maybe you can get double running back. You can get yourself not just Kamara, but you can get yourself Kamara and Melvin Gordon. And maybe that turns into a Melvin Gordon game, and he just goes nuts in the second half there against San Francisco. Barkley against New Orleans. Don't ignore him. That seems like it could be a great play as well. Elliott versus Detroit, absolutely in play as well. There's another running back I wanted to talk about, guys. And again, kind of going back to what I was saying before, I'm willing to roster anybody for the right price and pay anybody for the wrong price. Grant, David Johnson at 6.6K. Is that the right price now?
I mean, I've said it's the right price every single week, and it keeps going wrong. But I think they have to get him involved here. And with a rookie quarterback in there, that could change the dynamic drastically. So it's at least worth giving a shot there. I know they look terrible, and Seattle actually, their defense has not looked that bad this year. I mean, maybe it's because they faced Chicago, maybe it's because they faced Denver, maybe it's because they faced Dallas last week, which Dallas is terrible. Maybe it's just because Pete Carroll's actually that good of a coach. Who knows? But the problem with him being he's not the first guy I'm going with at the range. We'll get to that guy soon, I'm sure. But it's absolutely worth going with because they're probably going to roll with him in the red zone almost every single time. So at least if they are putting up points, it's probably going to be through David Johnson. And, 6.6K for quite possibly the best running back in the league is just silly in almost any single matchup.
Talent only gets you so far. Opportunity is the most important thing, Bobby. Is Johnson – he's only getting 15 touches. I know there's been some games where they just haven't had the ball. Time of possession is important too.
The same argument I made for Fitzgerald is also true for
him. We got internet.
What if they rededicate to him a little bit more? What if they needed more help with dump off? Did it happen again? Did I cut out?
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah, Bobby, your internet, like the SAT, your internet.
This is what happens. I finally got home from my long day. Yeah, anyway. And this is what happens. Welcome home with bad internet, as usual. All right. Well, I'm going with it anyway. I do think David Johnson is going to get more opportunity. It's been bad matchups. What if the offense could find more? I think it's worth taking a shot at him this week for sure. I don't know how I rate him compared to everybody else because it's just been frustrating. But I think that there's still a ton of upside, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up near the top of the running back boards on Sunday. So I'm just going to keep playing him in some and Fitz in some, and I might get burned by how bad their offense is, but I still think there's a lot of upside at these prices. So
let's jump to tight end. Grant, we mentioned the name before. Eric Ebron, he was chalky.
Wait, are we not going to talk about the best running back play on the board?
Gio Bernard, is that the best guy?
Yeah, Gio Bernard, a guy that catches the ball in the backfield, a guy that's in there for – You don't like Gio? Oh, we got
this is a bad take.
Go ahead.
I said we all like Gio.
Okay, I thought you were dumb.
We said it off air, though. We might as well say it in the pod, too. Greg, so you could jump and see who Atlanta has played the last 2 weeks. McCaffrey and Kamara have given up, a total of 30 catches or 29 catches to those running backs. Granted, Gio's not necessarily the same guy, but Gio is he's very confident, very capable of catching the ball. He's their traditional third down guy. And this is all under the assumption that Mixon's not going to play again. This is Monday. We don't know just yet, but as of right now, it doesn't look like he's going to play. The price has adjusted for Gio Bernard, but it hasn't adjusted enough, especially if, Atlanta's really weak as far as their linebackers. The way they scheme, it's my understanding. I didn't study the all-22, but they are very, very vulnerable to the running backs catching passes. And, especially on DK where you get the full points, it seems like a lock and low, like an awesome floor play as far as your cash games and nothing else. Is that where you're at, Grant?
Yeah, and tournaments and everything, and just play him. Atlanta's giving up 30%. They're already playing a bunch of plays in most of the or at least in the last 2 games. They are giving up 36% of opponent run targets are going to the running back. Gio has 17 on the year, had 8 last week. He's heavily involved in the pass game, and he is going to absolutely crush this year because Atlanta just can't seem to cover the running back and pass coverage. 6,300 is way too much considering you have an almost Christian McCaffrey-like floor this week.
Man, Carolina's on bye, obviously, but McCaffrey, we joked and McCaffrey's going to get 25 to 30 touches. Ha. He carried the ball 28 times last week, and that's just the carries, not including his catches.
How many catches did he end up having? I know halfway through the game he had 0 targets.
Is that true? Okay. I remember the carries were a ton. Now I'm curious. I'm going to pull it up because, all right, McCaffrey had 28 carries and he had 2 catches. Okay, so 30 touches. That's still – maybe because they're going into the bye week. I have no idea, but they certainly worked him a ton. We sort of mentioned his name in passing before and under the assumption that, Doyle is still out once again. Like Ebron was disappointing and frustrating and all that. He was still okay, and he got a fair amount of targets. I believe he had 11 last week. 11 targets, 5 catches for 11 yards, and 3 of them were targeted in the end zone. And, he's bad at catching the ball in perfect weather, and it was drizzling and raining out there, so of course he's not going to catch the ball. He's got those old butterfingers, but the price is not fully adjusted, and, it's kind of a crapshoot. I don't mind Njoku for Cleveland. I think he still has plenty of talent, and, Ricky Seals-Jones at 2.9K is pretty respectable. But, Bobby, like tight ends, unless you're spending all the way up, it's definitely a dart throw.
I don't think it's such a dart throw. I think maybe this is going to sound dart throwy, but I think Trey Burton's going to have a monster week. If you see how open the middle of the field is against Tampa Bay, like we saw what Pittsburgh, I don't know what they ended up with their tight ends, but
I think Vance McDonald had 400 yards.
Well, he had that stiff arm that he just knocked out. He basically ended the guy's career.
No, but the field was it was all wide open before that even. It's with that kind of possibility, I think Trey Burton I look to more and more. You got a good offensive coach coming in who's going to pick on them. I like Trey Burton a lot, and I think Jared Cook is going to be completely overlooked against the Cleveland team that might have looked better against the tight end than they actually are, considering they haven't faced a team that really plays with one. I think this is a good spot for Cook at 4,100. I love them for tournaments. I'm not even thinking about anyone else except for maybe Ebron.
Bobby, give me your Ebron pivot. Grant, I'm sorry.
There's a lot. I mean, this is really early in the week. This is just preliminary stuff. But Dallas Joe Dirt, I believe is his name. Joe Dirt.
I don't believe that's correct.
The G has a J sound to it, like Jeffrey or Joffrey, like the one true king. He was heavily involved in the game last week. They still don't have too many options. I mean, can't remember if Jordan Matthew actually did anything. I'm assuming Jeffrey's still going to be out, and this is largely contingent on. And yes, they still have Ertz, but even with Ertz getting 10 targets, King Joe Dirt. I'm not King Joe Dirt. Joe Dirt had 7 of them. He still was heavily involved. I could see it being the case again. There's Charles Clay going up against Green Bay, who's giving up a ton of stuff, a ton of targets to tight ends this year. Burton and Ebron, you nailed it, Bobby. Burton's a great play. We saw exactly what happened with Tampa Bay tonight, and then I need to look into this. This was just very, very early on. I haven't looked into it too much, but just seeing what Jeff Swan did against Seattle last week, getting 7 targets there, going up against Detroit. That's not great against tight end. They're about average, but he's only 2,600. And you don't find that cheap of tight ends that are actually viable too often. So I need to look into it more, but he could potentially be a guy that really gets involved this week.
Wow. I did not think that who was that? Jeff Swan is dropping the podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
He had 7 targets last week.
I was not.
Yeah, that's where they all for a total of 10 yards.
Irrelevant how many yards don't matter in fantasy. You know that.
No, that's absolutely not true. They completely.
47 yards. So when you're getting a guy for 2,600, I don't care. It allows me to pay off for Kamara, who's going to get 100 points.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dallas because he actually had a big game as well. And I don't know. I think it's dependent upon like if Sproles has to be out. Well, I understand it's not the same position, but I feel like he had a huge jump in his snaps. I was looking at that. I was on the PFF earlier, and I don't recall specifically, but I feel like he had a big jump as far as snaps in week 2 versus week 3. And I think he needs some other parts being out. But like you said, assuming the scenario is the same, I guess he's in play, I suppose. I built a team, guys. Do you want to hear a team? You got to leave 2 players off. I'm not sure if you guys will be happy. And it's so not a tournament team because I didn't correlate my quarterback, but this is just what I'm going to do as a cash game off the top of my head and as the pot is going along. This is what I came up with. Watson at quarterback. Kamara at running back. He's really good, right? Kamara's pretty good. Gio Bernard, running back. We went cheap as far as receivers. Shepard, Fitzgerald, and Enunwa. You can tell I made this team. I left the tight end open. I left the defense open, and I put in David Johnson, and you got 3.5K left to play with. There you go. That's my first lineup of the week. I'm sure you guys hate it because there's no correlation.
I mean, I don't. So what's
Can I
the
read my
score?
first one of the week based on our score? I have Ryan wait, no, that's not the right one. No, I have Watson, Gio Bernard, Carlos Hyde, DeAndre Hopkins, Allen Robinson, Shepard, Trey Burton, and then I'll leave the other 2 spots blank.
Yeah, good call, leaving them blank.
Hey, we got to stay corporate here, guys. We got to make sure we abide by the DK standards. Leave 2 spaces open. Is there anything else that's kind of worth noting as far as this week? Is there anything else you want to talk about before we dive in? Because, Bobby, this is an intervention, Bobby. We have to sit down and talk to you because Grant is very angry at you. You were a bad boy. You did not abide by the rules of the podcast. You did not tweet. You did not tweet your punishment last week.
Oh, that was you know what happened? I mean, there was a good reason for it. Like, it was
Really?
I had just
You lost the internet for the entire week?
I could have been reminded. If Grant would have reminded me, I would have done it. I just forgot.
Yeah, remember when I reminded you?
When it was right after I had just tweeted about my friends.
Yeah, and I said to do it the next day.
Yeah, but I wasn't going to remember the next day. The next day.
So if I have to remind you every single day, oh gosh.
Every time you got to write it for me, son.
So you lost last week, Bobby, and not to rub it in or anything, but you lost again this week. So Grant, like, is there like a double tweet? What do we do to, and also he's got to learn a lesson too, right? We can't just let it slide, I don't think.
Yeah, so.
Last week, the week 1, Grant, I actually tweeted out, like, I said I started at a UPS hashtag, what can Brown do for you? Like,
Which is just clever.
And people were tweeting at me like, dude, that's gross, and I got unfollowed. It was a whole thing, and I couldn't explain it. That's the rules of the podcast. I play alone. And if I had known, I could just get away.
This podcast has one message. It's that we don't want followers. We want people unfollowing us. No, I'm not.
That's exactly the
Mission
point.
accomplished.
I think the entire point of this podcast is to embarrass each other. That's the only thing you can do. Well, at least that's my whole goal.
All right, well, come up with something for me to do, and I'll do it.
I'm thinking you have to tweet a minimum of 7 times this week. It doesn't matter what you tweet, just you have to. Wait, no. I'm not controlling your tweets. You should be tweeting 7 times a week because we all want to hear your thoughts. But you have to hashtag each tweet with Grant's my daddy and then something about Dean. Ouch, I'm a bad boy, maybe.
No, this is way worse than 1 tweet.
Yeah, well, maybe if you would have done it on time, it wouldn't be a problem.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Grant, do you have anything planned for him as far as tweets, or can I come over that through the week, or what?
I was just I was going to make it harsh with something like Julio Jones is now the 2nd best receiver on the Falcons. It's not even a question. His career is over with. He goes the same way as Tom Brady. Hashtag they're done.
He goes the same way as Tom Brady.
Yeah, to add on to absurdity. But,
yeah.
I don't think.
We'll definitely come up with something and make it work. But, yeah, so Bobby, again, granted, Bobby doesn't tweet. I guess you have to get on top of him to remind him. If not today, tomorrow, or the next day.
You don't have to get on top of me. You can just remind me.
Okay. Well, he said he nudged you once. He doesn't want to be overbearing.
He can be overbearing.
well, now you're just giving us conflicting views. By the way, guys, this might be the part of the segment of the podcast.
Well, who is shuffling papers right now?
Yo, what are you doing, Bobby?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my notepad out for this weekend.
You have a notepad? What are you?
Yeah, I
what,
go
97.
That's my first step of like my process is to like write down notes, and I didn't have my notepad.
Do you get out your
My laptop has notes where I can write stuff on. That's what I do. No?
What's that?
I mean, I actually have a laptop where you can just type notes into.
I know. I want something less reliable. I'm looking for maximum inefficiency but more importantly, efficiency with how my brain works. It's just the
so can you on your notepad in a big font write down, make sure to tweet, must tweet this week. Can you write that down on your notepad?
Then I'll be spending the whole week looking for players named Must and Tweet. Why was I so on these Must and Tweet?
And don't forget to put down hash grants my daddy.
Hash grants my daddy? Not even hashtag? Just like a little
That's
hash symbol.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you know this is 2018. We shorten words.
You can't shorten hashtags because hash actually means something else.
Yeah, well, so
This
do
is
a
the
lot
end
of
of the
things.
podcast. I don't know if people are realizing we're done with our analysis. We powered through about 45 minutes or so of a straight DFS analysis. We also have we haven't quite figured out what the reprimanding of Bobby's going to be. We'll figure that out on the Twitter machine. I'm sure you guys will piece together what tweet is actually from the podcast for sure. I guess the hashtag, if you will, Grant's my daddy. We'll kind of give it away. But Grant, one more thing before I step aside, we have to talk about our question of the week. Of course, how this works, if you answer this question, much like if you heard from the beginning of the podcast, Grant asked what the best discontinued fast food was in all the world, and he was the decider of this one, that it's the Double Down. Which
Yeah, we already went through this one. We haven't given the new one.
Yeah, so the new one, for the people that answer in the comment section this week, what is it, Grant?
So it's my favorite game to play in the world. Just the best possible role for Danny DeVito. So you take any existing TV show, movie, or even just scene from any movie and replace Danny DeVito in there to give you some free material to figure it out. You can't use these, but it's like William Wallace's speech. Replace William Wallace and make him Danny DeVito and have Danny DeVito give that speech and just think about it in your head. It's hilarious. Vin Diesel's speech to Paul Walker in Fast and the Furious about how he won. The Gladiator opening scene. Replace Russell Crowe as Danny DeVito. The best possible use of Danny DeVito in any role throughout cinema history.
Now, just to clarify, are you saying scene or are you saying like actual?
You can do full-on movies. I don't want to take all the good ones, but I mean, any of those three guys I just mentioned. Imagine Danny DeVito as Gladiator. Just think about that.
Bill Simmons game, would this movie be better? Have you ever listened to the Rewatchables?
I don't think so. Yes,
I haven't meaning to. I like the concept, but I haven't listened to it yet.
It's terrific. I actually like it better than I like watching the movies. When I'm driving, it's like all I listen to. But anyway, they have this thing at the end where you have to answer which three of these three guys could any of them made the movie better. It's Steve Buscemi, Danny Trejo, and the other one is who's the other one? Come on, dude, the guy from Oz.
I don't know. I don't listen to the podcast, but I like anything.
The guy from Oz and Boardwalk Empire. Michael C. Is it
that's
Michael?
Michael C. Hall.
No. Michael C. Hall.
John C. Reilly.
No, Michael.
No, Michael C. Hall is from Dexter, and he's from
not Michael C. Hall.
as well.
What's the guy's name?
You're thinking of Michael Shannon.
Whatever.
Wait, so you're saying they stole my idea? Because I came
Michael
up with this like 6 years ago.
Well, I'm sure they didn't hear it, but
Those sons of biscuit.
How about the Gimp? You have Danny DeVito as the Gimp in Pulp Fiction. Top that.
I mean, he already did that when he hit a couch.
You already brought that up a disturbing number of times.
It's because I have a Gimp suit, Bobby.
Wait, is that what inspired? I thought we talked about that off the air. Yeah, and that's a whole other conversation that people don't. It's for a whole other podcast, I think, explaining why you have a random Gimp suit lying around. But Bobby, you give us a parting thought, if you will.
I just think this is a weird week when things were starting to make a lot of sense. But I think that you can go a lot of different ways this week, and you don't necessarily need a 5-man stack to win a giant GPP, which I think you'll have to do more in general. And also, I think that we've got a pretty good base of information, and this should be a week where you should start playing a little heavier.
Grant, give me something.
Bobby, you need new internet. That's
Yeah,
first off.
for sure.
And I
Oh
can
my
say
God.
that because I've had mine insulted for the last 3 years.
Oh
And
my
now
God.
it's top notch here.
I just got home, man. I've been gone for 2 months.
Get
Today.
that fiber or something, man. Hook it up. Come on, splurge the extra $12 a
You
month.
can't use that as an excuse. You've been gone for like 7 of the last 8 months. Is that right? Raz.
No.
You just caught Bobby at mid-gulp, I believe. But, Grant, you got anything else, or are we getting out of here?
Hey, you can find value at tight end and wide receiver real easily this week. I know that game stacking is more viable this year because of the rule changes. So game stacking is the way to go. And don't forget to play Dallas Joe Dirt.
Well, that's not exactly how you say it, but fair enough. Dallas Joker. All right. Again, hit up our comment section. Let us know. Give us an answer for the Dan DeVito. The best answer. The gifts are definitely encouraged. Best answer gets you guys a nice, sweet RotoGrinders t-shirt. With that, we're stepping aside. This was the absolutely early epic week for podcast. He's Grant. He's Bobby. I'm Dean. Thanks for listening. We're out of here. Oh.
See you, kids.